Do you need a minute or should we go for it?
No, let's just go for it, Sheila. Come on the hot. There's nothing like it, is there? Blame John Sopel.
I blame John Sopel for everything.
He talks too slowly.
Yeah. Does he? Let's talk about... We've been talking the first hour already about Keir Starmer's choices and how popular they appear to be with the general public. His allies have turned against Tony Blair over his critique of Iran, haven't they?
Yeah, well, look, they have. I mean... I don't think that Keir Starmer, who has obviously not had the easiest political year, I think that it probably will not have been entirely unwelcome in 10 Downing Street to have Tony Blair, whether he sort of realised it would leak or not, for Tony Blair's comments on this to become known. Because if there is one thing, Blair is a sort of complicated figure, obviously, in the history of the Labour Party. He's obviously by far and away their most successful leader electorally, but the shadow of Iraq continues to linger and to loom so large over the country, for sure, and over international politics, but over the Labour Party in particular. I think there is no doubt whatsoever that even if Starmer and his cabinet had been more minded to get involved more directly and in a more timely way with the Americans, that shadow would have made it harder for them to do it. And the fact of the matter is that Starmer finds himself, for once, exactly where nearly all of the parliamentary Labour Party is, where I suspect most, if not all, of the Labour Party in the country is, and actually, perhaps, more importantly, where the country itself is. And according to the polling, actually, attitudes have hardened towards this intervention over the course of this war, I should say, over the course of the last 10 days, which is perhaps not surprising when every single hour of every single day, people up and down the country are going to petrol forecourts, filling up their cars and paying more because of the decision that was made in Israel and in the United States.
Or the 2 million people filling up their oil tank and finding it's doubled or more than doubled. It was interesting. James did it yesterday on his programme, James O'Brien. He played a chunky clip of Tony Blair's post-Chilcot mea culpa. Remember that long 2-hour, I think it was about 2-hour press conference. It happened live when I was on air. It was great fun. When he did...
An easy day.
Yeah, it was. I thought, no, you can tell he's converted to Catholicism. This was the longest confession I'd ever seen in my life. But anyway, James O'Brien played a clip of it and then set the mea culpa alongside what he said at the weekend in that event in which he was saying... Actually, we should have gone in. And the mea culpa was all about what he'd learned. And the comments at the weekend proved that he actually hadn't learned those things.
Look, I think Blair, in 2003 and since, took a very specific view of what the Anglo-American relationship was. And his view was that in order to retain, for Britain, which is now a middle-ranking power, for Britain to project global power and retain global influence, the British Prime Minister has to pretty much in all circumstances move in lockstep with the Oval Office. And at best, therefore, what the British Prime Minister can in effect become, which is kind of what Blair became in those days, was almost a kind of dual Secretary of State, a kind of representative for the President of the United States and the rest of the world. Now, that is one theory, and it can work. But as we saw with Iraq, it came at an enormous cost. It came at an enormous cost to him personally because the Iraq War broke the new Labour coalition. It never recovered and arguably never really has. It tarnished his premiership and historical reputation, but also, of course, more importantly, hundreds of British servicemen and women died in Iraq. And also, of course, the actual consequences for Iraq itself, Iraqis and the region, were on the whole appalling. And we're still living with the cost. One of the reasons Iran became more powerful over the last 20 years was because the Iraq War helped enhance Iranian power in the region. So these consequences are unknowable. I'll just say one thing about Starmer. I think in a weird way, Starmer has ended up politically in the kind of sweet spot, which is that the truth is that we know, as we were saying, that the British public are against this. He is, for once, firmly where the British public are. He sent a strong signal and his cabinet sent a strong signal in delaying the use of American bases for 24 hours or 36 hours or so. And the way that he's spoken about it since has sent a strong signal that he thought this was a bad idea, didn't see the legal basis for it, etc., etc.
And he said, didn't he, in midweek, I asked for explanations and they didn't satisfy me. Yeah.
And that has irritated Trump. But the truth is, of course, he's still given Trump quite a lot of what he wants. It would have irritated Trump far more, perhaps destroyed the relationship between him and Starmer altogether, if he'd refused access to the bases at all, because let's not forget, the Americans are using our bases and British bases in the UK and beyond for their military operations. So he's basically, either by luck or judgment, who knows, maybe a combination of the two, ended up, I think, politically in a pretty sound space because he doesn't own any of the economic consequences of this. Consider if he'd done what Kemi Badenoch and some of the right-wing papers wanted him to do, which is actively get involved in the war, or at the very least rhetorically back Trump on it from the start. He would now having to defend this war. He would have to defend it, and on some level politically, he would have to own some of the consequences from it. So I would say that Starmer has ended up in a pretty reasonable political space where he's not destroyed the US-UK relationship. I think that, Trump will get over it, but also at the same time, he sent a signal to the British public about where he stands, and he's taken a decision which I think, people will give him some credit for.
Bit of a Love Actually moment?
I wouldn't go that far.
A Like Actually moment?
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, the truth is, look, I think the reason that, the truth is Starmer, I think, to some extent, is taking, yes, he's tried to stay very close to Trump, and he's put a lot of personal political capital in all of that. But he hasn't done what Blair did, which is basically acquiesce to the American president and go full square behind him the entire time. And to be honest, the Starmer position is a bit more within the historical norm of where a British Prime Minister was. It isn't always the case. Harold Wilson in Vietnam, of course, or even the other way around. Ronald Reagan didn't back Margaret Thatcher over the Falklands in the opening stages of that conflict. He sort of saw Argentina as a sort of key part of the sort of anti-communist bloc.
And they were incredibly close personally, weren't they?
And they were incredibly... And Thatcher was furious with Reagan. In the end, Reagan sort of swayed behind the British, but it took some time. There are moments when, we are not one and the same. We are separate countries, and I think, Starmer has been able to speak to that.
Would I be right in saying that when Blair took the decision to, stand shoulder to shoulder with Blair, as he put it, he had more political capital to burn? And boy, did he burn it. But he had more political capital to burn than Starmer currently has.
It's funny, in 2000, Blair wins, obviously, the 2001 election by almost as big a margin as he won the 1997 election. And Richard Wilson, who was then the cabinet secretary, said to him, Prime Minister, you'll never be more powerful than you are at this moment. You've just won a second landslide victory. You have the ultimate political authority and sway to do whatever you want. And of course, how did Blair spend that capital? Well, of course, he did lots of things domestically in that second term, but principally that second term is, of course, remembered for the reaction to 9/11, which was obviously beyond Blair's control. It was dominated by events. But that decision to, irrespective of what the UN said, to be, as you say, Sheila, shoulder to shoulder with George Bush. So yes, he went into that conflict with a great deal more sway over the Parliamentary Labour Party and complete command of British politics in a way that Starmer didn't. Let's be honest, if Starmer had tried, if Starmer had decided to do a Blair, which I think, actually would not be in his instincts and makeup. He's a very different politician. He cares about different things, international law, all that sort of stuff. But if he had decided to say to his cabinet, no, I'm not going to listen to you on this. If he turned to the country and said, no, we're going to support the Americans on it, and even more so, actually actively support, I think we would be having quite a serious conversation about his leadership, right, and his premiership. That may have been the straw that broke the camel's back, because there would be insufficient support within the PLP and in the country overall. I'm sure Starmer will have been aware of that, rightly, because as a Prime Minister, he does have to consider the politics.
I was going to say, it's politics, isn't it?
Exactly.
Thank you very much indeed, Lewis. I'm going to finish every one of our conversations with that now.
What? It's politics, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the time.
That might get tired, but we'll give it a go.
No, let's do it. I like it.
Let's do it.